Hello friends and welcome to another episode of IQ Dude. In this episode we will go through the Mensa Denmark IQ test. And the first question is quite self-explanatory. The answer is C. Question number 2. In this case we just add another leaf to the flower when we move one step to the right in the rows. So we will have 3 filled in leaves here in the flower in this part, and they will be blue, and the correct answer is F. In this case the vertical line is moving one step to the right, as you can see here, and when we go down the rows the number of lines increase 1, 2, 3. So we will have 3 lines here, and they will be located on the right side, because every time we move one step to the right in the columns, the lines will move one step to the right. So the correct answer here is G. This one is self-explanatory as well. The diagonal just changes directions. So in this case it will change directions and you will get a more symmetrical figure as well. So the answer is C. In this case we just add one red square on the top of the other one, so we will have 3 squares there, and in the rows the squares stay in the same place when it comes to the columns part here, but when we move down the rows then the squares will move one step to the right. So the squares will end up here on the right side, and we will have one extra square here if we follow the pattern. So we will have 3 squares on top of each other on the right side. On the right side. This one's on the right side, this one's on the right side, this one's. So it's B. And this one is similar to the one we've already had before, but now we move to the left with the vertical line here. So one step to the left and we'll end up there. The horizontal line doesn't move in the rows, except if you move down one step, then the horizontal line also moves down one step. But in the same row, the horizontal line stays in the same position. So again, vertical line moves one step to the left and ends up there. Moves one step to the left, it will end up there, and we will have a horizontal line in the same position as in the other images here on this row. So the correct answer is H. Next one. In this case the red square here moves one step to the right, ends up there, moves one step to the right, ends up there. The bottom part square moves one step to the left, ends up there, moves one step to the left, ends up there. Let's see if the same applies for the next row. This square moves one step to the right, this square moves one step to the left, and they will overlap in the middle here. And then this square continues one step to the left, this one continues one step to the right, and they will end up there. So the pattern is correct. So in this case, this square moves one step to the left, ends up there, moves one step to the left, it will end up there in the top left corner. This square on the other hand moves to the right, and one step to the right again, so it will end up there. The correct answer is therefore F. This one is quite self-explanatory. What figure are we missing in this row? Well, it's a circle, of course, because we have one triangle, circle, square. So we have one of each in each row, so the correct answer is A. You can also view it as that you have the same figures across the diagonals. Either way, the answer is A. Well, if we move in the rows direction, it's the same figure, nothing changes. So logically it should be H. If we move in the rows direction like this, then the colors will flip, they will change. So if we move downwards to go here, then we need to flip these colors. So we will get red and blue. Still, answer is H. In this case, we have an overlapping puzzle. It's an addition, because this figure and this figure, they will add up in the middle here, and we will get this figure. So this circle and this circle will overlap and add up and end up in this figure. So the question here is, what do we need to add with this figure to get this figure? Well, of course, we need a triangle oriented this way. So if you add this one to this one, then you will get this figure. So the correct answer is C. C is the correct answer. Next one. Now we need to think a little bit, because we have a triangle here, and then we have an instruction, and then we have the result here, the ending figure here. So this instruction tells us that the triangle needs to be elongated in this direction in order to get this triangle. And this instruction here tells us that this circle needs to be elongated in the horizontal direction to get this ellipse. So logically, what will this tell us? Well, it tells us that this square needs to be elongated in both directions, both vertically and horizontally. And this will just lead to us getting a bigger square, but still a square. So we will get C. That's the correct answer. And this one is not that hard either, because you have 1, 2, and you have 3 lines in each row. So 1, 2, 3. So we will have 1 line in this figure. But what direction will this line have? Well, we have 1 line that is oriented this way. We have, which is like diagonally 45 degrees. We have also the option of the vertical direction, and we also have the option in each row in the horizontal direction. This applies for the second row as well. You can see we have the vertical orientation, the horizontal orientation, and the diagonal. So here we have the horizontal orientation, the diagonal orientation, but we are missing the vertical orientation. As we've said before, we will only have 1 line here. So the correct answer is H. Next one. Well, let's see what happens with these flowers. First, let's look at the dark blue leaf. It moves 1 step to the right, 1 step to the right, or 1 step clockwise. Ends up there. 1 step clockwise, 1 step clockwise, ends up there. 1 step clockwise, 1 step clockwise, it will end up there. It will be dark blue. So we will have 1 leaf that is dark blue in this direction. And the ones that apply is this one, number D, or number E. So those options we have, and the other options are not correct. Let's look at the other leaf. Well, we can conclude that we have yellow, red, and green for the other leaf in each of the rows. So red, green, yellow, green, yellow. What is missing? Well, the red one is missing. So E is the correct answer. And also the other leaf moves 1 step to the right or clockwise and changes color from yellow to red, from red to green, so, and from green back to yellow. So from green to yellow, from yellow to red. So either way, answer E is the correct one. This is an addition puzzle, but with a twist. And now the answer to the addition is in the third column here. So we can put a plus sign between the first and the second column. But the twist is that if we add these ones up, we will get this image. It doesn't look like the result, like this image. So what happens is that the areas that overlap in this figure and in this figure, when you add them up together, they will cancel out. So it is this vertical line that overlaps when we add them up together, and it will cancel out and disappear. And then we will get this figure. Same thing here. What parts of this and this figure overlap? Well, it is this horizontal line, and we will be left with this vertical line. This horizontal line will disappear and we will get this figure. So what parts of this figure and this figure overlap? Well, it's the horizontal line, right? Because we have a horizontal line here and one there as well. So this line will disappear, and we will get a line here and a line here. So the resulting figure will be something like this. And the correct answer is therefore G. So remember that the parts that overlap will cancel out and disappear. The parts that don't overlap will remain. Next one. Same thing here, addition and cancellation puzzle. So now I think you're getting the hang of it. Just add these up. This is the result. This part and this part will overlap and therefore disappear, and we will end up with this part. Same thing here. We don't have to do the second row. Let's move to the third row. This part and this part will overlap and therefore disappear. So we will end up with an arrow that points this way. So the correct answer is D. This is a simple addition puzzle. It's quite easy, as you can see. We add this one, the triangle, to the circle, and we get this one. There are no overlapping parts, no nothing. Yes, so it should be like this, right? If you add them up together. So the correct answer should be B. This one wasn't that hard. Okay, number 17. So in this case we are, as you can see, when we are going in this direction in the rows, the red square moves one step down ends up there. This square moves one step to the left, and then one step up ends up there. This square moves one step to the right, and then logically one step to the right again. So you can see the squares move in this direction. They move around in the periphery. They move around, and this applies for all of the rows. So we will end up with a red square in the top right corner, and therefore the correct answer is F. Next one. So this is an addition and cancellation puzzle again. So the things that overlap will cancel out and disappear. Things that overlap here are the circle, so the circle will disappear. Things that overlap here are the square, outer square, and the circle, so they will disappear. We'll end up, things that overlap here is the square, so the square will disappear. We'll end up just with this dot. So the correct answer is E. In this case, we are moving one step to the right all the time, right? So when we are moving in this direction in the rows, the red squares are moving one step to the right. We end up there. This one moves one step to the right, but where will it end up? Well, it continues on the next row here. So it continues on the next row, and this one will replace replace its place by moving to the right once. Let's see if the same things apply here. Moves to the right, moves to the right. This one will move to the right, this one will move to the right. Yeah, it will move down. There, and up there, that's correct. Let's see what happens with this one. This one will move there. This one will move to the right and up there. This one will move to the right. But where will it end up? Well, it has to, of course, begin in the first square here. And then this one will end up there. So we will have one red square in the top left corner and one red square in the bottom right corner. So the correct answer is B. Flowers again. Question number 20. Well, as you can see, in each row we have a different flower pattern. So we have 2 filled leaves on this side and then 1 single leaf here, and here we have 3 single leaves with 1 leaf in between, and here we have 3 single leaves with 2 non-colored leaves in between. Same thing here. So we have one of these setups in each of the rows. So here we have 1 leaf in between, here we have 2 leaves in between, and here we have 2 leaves that are together and 1 that is isolated over here. So which pattern is missing on the third row? Well, we have 2 leaves in between, we have 2 leaves that are tight together and 1 that is isolated, but we don't have this pattern where we have 1 leaf in between. So the answer down here will be a flower that has this setup, this pattern. And the only flowers that have that pattern are A, E, C, and H. So we can just remove all of the other options. They are not the correct answer. So which one of these colors will it be? Well, as you can see, we have red, blue, green, green, red, blue, blue, green. So it has to be a red one, right? Because we have different colors in each of the rows. We have 1 red, 1 blue, and 1 green in each of the rows. So it has to be a red one. So we can exclude E. E is out of the picture as well. So it has to be A, C, or H. If we look at the patterns here, if we look at this configuration, and then we look at the corresponding configuration in the second row, it is this configuration. And then we look at the corresponding configuration in the third row, it's this configuration. And you will notice actually that if we add all of these configurations up, we will get a fully colored flower. Because if we add this one to this one, then this one will be red, this one will be red, this one will be red as well. And then if we add this flower to this one, then the remaining uncolored leaves will be colored as well. So we will get a fully colored flower. Same things apply for this configuration. If we add this flower to this flower to this flower, we will get a fully colored flower. So now if you add this flower to this flower, then this leaf will be colored, this leaf will be colored, and this leaf will be colored. So the only leaves that are remaining that are not colored now is this leaf, and this leaf. So we need a colored leaf here, colored leaf there, and a colored leaf here. So this configuration is the correct configuration in order to get a fully colored flower. And the only one of these options that are corresponding to that one is C, as you can see. It's not A and it's not H. So C is the correct answer. Question number 21. Well, this is not that hard actually, because if you follow everything in the rows direction, if we go in this direction on each row, then you can see that this part of the figure is moving inwards. So it's moving inwards. It's imploding. So it's moving inwards, these small parts, and then you will end up with a circle. Same thing here. This part, this part, this part, and this part is moving inwards, ending up there, and then also continuing to move inwards, these parts, and then we'll end up there, and they will intercross here. Same thing here. This part, this part, this part, this part is moving inwards. So if it continues to move inwards, where will it end up? Well, if you think about it, if this part moves further inwards, it will be like this. And this is the vertical and horizontal line. If this curve moves inwards, it will end up there as well. And the same thing applies in this direction. So this part will move inwards, end up there. This part will move inwards, end up there. So we will get something. Let's draw it again. We will get something that looks like this. And the only figure that corresponds to that is A. So A is the correct answer. Question number 22. Well, let's first concentrate on the red parts. You can see that we have a red circle, red square, and then nothing. Red square, red circle, nothing. Red circle, nothing, so it has to be a red square if every row should correspond to that rule. And then, therefore, we can exclude these options, this option, and these options. So what should be inside of the square now? Well, the only thing that is missing is this figure, because we already have this figure here, we have that figure here. Only thing that's missing is this figure here. So the correct answer is E. (23) I think this is quite similar to the previous one we had, number 22. We should concentrate on looking at things that are similar, and what's similar here is the top part of each figure is only occurring once in each row. So we have an open configuration, partially open configuration, and a closed configuration. So here we have closed, partially open, 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 closed. So this one has to be partially open, if the same pattern should apply in each row. And what's the other pattern? Well, if we look at the other pattern is if it's concave inwards, or if it has this configuration like a bowl, or if it's straight. So those are the three options. And in this case we already have one which is concave inwards, we have one that is straight, but we don't have one that has this configuration like a bowl. So the one that's correct is this figure, which corresponds to E. So E is the correct answer. This is a pretty similar problem with a twist. You have a circle, triangle, square, triangle, square, circle, square, circle. We need to have a triangle, right? Because you have one of each in each row. You have one of each. Either you have one circle, one triangle, and one square. So we need to have one triangle here. Then we can exclude a whole lot of options here. So we have three options remaining. So we have one circle that is inside of the figure, one blue circle. We have one circle that's inside of the figure as well, but it's open, it's not completely colored here. And then we have one circle that is outside of the figure. So outside, inside fully colored, inside partially colored. So inside partially colored, outside partially colored. So we need to have one that's inside and that is fully colored here. So the correct answer should be C. You can see this pattern also if you move diagonally, because in this diagonal all the blue circles are fully colored. In this diagonal we only have partially colored circles that are outside of the figure, and in this diagonal we have circles that are partially colored that are inside of the figure. So either way, C is the correct answer. Number 25, this is a similar problem. As you can see, we have one white circle here, and then we have two black circles, and then we have two white circles and two black circles. So logically it has to be a white circle here. White, black, black, white, white, black, black, white, white. So it has to be a white one here. So what about the inner circle, the smaller inner circle? Well, we know how it moves, because if we go in the rose directions and then continue here, and then go in the rose directions again, and then continue here, and then go in the rose direction, you can see that it moves one step down, and then it goes to the left, and then it moves one step up, and then it goes to the right, and then it moves one step down. So it's moving around in a clockwise manner. So this one will go here, and then it will go here, and it will end up there. Next question is, should this circle be white or black? Well, if we look at the same thing, same principle as we had before, we have white, white, two consecutive white inner circles, then we have two consecutive black inner circles, two consecutive white inner circles. So logically there should be two consecutive black inner circles. So this one should be black. So a white circle with a smaller black circle inside. So the correct answer should be F. Another way to look at it is if you manage to see the pattern in the diagonal direction, because these figures are the same, these figures are the same, and these figures are the same as well. So either way you will end up with the correct answer being F. This is a very interesting puzzle, and first when you look at it you see that there is some rotation going on, and now you need to know where the rotational axis is. So in this part here we actually have, this part here consists of three lines. We have one line here, one line here, and one line that is overlapping with the smaller lines. And the rotational axis is here. There are three rotational axes. It's one here, and then there's one there, and then there's one rotational axis in the middle. And now this part will rotate down 45 degrees, end up there. This part will also rotate clockwise, the big part, and it will end up there. And then the smaller part will also rotate clockwise 45 degrees, and it will end up there. And then this clockwise 45 degree rotation continues. So the rotational axis, remember, is here, here, and here. So then this part will rotate here. Then this part will rotate 45 degrees there. This long one. And then this part will rotate 45 degrees clockwise there. So we will end up with this figure. This one will rotate there, will end up there. This one will rotate downwards, will end up there. And this one will rotate 45 degrees there, will end up there. And so far and so forth. This one will end up there, 45 degrees. This one will end up there, 45 degrees. And this one will end up like this, 45 degrees. So let's see what the last one looks like. Well, first of all, the big one will rotate clockwise 45 degrees, ending up there. So we will have one that is located like that. And then we will have one, because the rotational axis is here and here, this one will rotate down. So this one will actually, yeah, it will end up there, because there is no other option. So it will end up there. And then this one will rotate upwards and end up there. So we will have something like, that looks like this. And the correct answer is therefore D. D is the correct answer. Alright, question number 27. This is again an addition and cancellation puzzle. You add this one up, add this one up, add this one, add this one up, and the parts that overlap will cancel out and disappear. The parts that overlap here is this one will disappear, and this one will disappear because it corresponds to these parts. So only parts that are not overlapping are these two horizontal lines. Let's move on to the third row now, because we've already had several examples with these cases, so you're probably good at it now. So the only thing that will overlap between this and this figure is this diagonal. So this diagonal needs to disappear, and this part will not overlap when we add them up together, so it will remain. So we will have something that looks like this. And the only thing that corresponds to that is D. Number 28, interesting puzzle. And now we need to see what pattern we have in each row. If we move like that, or actually we just need to see what's missing in this row that's present in the other rows, because we have this blue flower here in this row and in this row, but it's missing in this row, so it has to be a blue flower, right? So we can exclude quite a few options that don't have this blue flower cross. So we'll end up with A, G, or D. And the other thing that this row is missing is this this purple circle, right? Because we have a purple circle in each row apart from the third row. And the only option that has a purple circle is D. So D is the correct answer here. So this again is an instruction puzzle in the way that we have a row here, and then but in this time it's in the rows direction. Remember, before we had an instruction in the columns direction, like here from this column to this column to this column, but now we have an instruction in the rows direction that is in this middle row. So it is this middle row that tells us what we should do with the figure in the first row. So here we have a square, and then this figure tells us something that we need to do with the square in order to get this figure. Or you can move in the other direction as well, but it's easier to move downwards because it's the last image here that we're missing. So this cross actually tells us to shrink the square in all directions to get this one. This instruction tells us to rotate this figure to get it in this direction, because then we'll end up with this figure. So what will this instruction tell us? Well, it will tell us, first of all, that we need to shrink this figure, right? In all directions. But then it also tells us that we need to rotate the figure, because it's oriented in another direction than this one. If it was just oriented in this direction, then all we would need was just to shrink this figure down, and then we would get option F. But since this cross is rotated a bit, we need to rotate this figure as well. And to rotate it, because that's what the middle column tells us, to rotate, the rotational part. So to rotate, if we rotate this figure and if we also shrink it, we will get option B. So option B is the correct one. This one is interesting too, because what does this figure and this figure have in common? Well, this figure is in the small inner square of this figure, right? So this one, if you add it to the inner square of that figure, you'll get this figure. So does that also apply for the second row? Well, if you have this one and you add it to the inner circle, you'll end up with this figure. So what happens if we take this figure and add it to the inside of this figure? Well, then we would get figure E. So figure E is the correct answer. Question 31. Well, as you can see, when we move in this direction, something is happening to these two sides. They are getting concave inwards. So these two sides are getting buckled inwards, and we'll end up there. And then not only that they're getting buckled inwards, but they continue in their path. So this part will continue going here, and this part will continue going there to the left, and we'll end up with this part. So this part is already buckled in the vertical direction. But now, if we apply the same principle as in the first row, if we buckle it here, and if we buckle it there, we'll end up with this figure. And now if this part continues to the right, and if this buckled part from the first figure continues to the left, we'll end up with this figure. So let's apply the same principle in the last row. This side and this side get buckled, they get concave inwards, and then they continue their path to the right and to the left. So this part will continue its path to the right, ending up there. This part will continue its path to the left, ending up there. And these parts, the upper and the lower part, will be unchanged. So we'll get a figure like this, and the only one that's corresponding to that one is D. So D is the correct answer. And this is an interesting question. If we move in the rows in the right direction here, what's the difference between this figure and this figure? Well, the difference between those two figures is this part right here, right? That part corresponding to this part that has been rotated in the clockwise direction. So it's been rotated 90 degrees, right? 90 degrees. So what's the difference between this figure and this figure? Well, it's this part corresponding to this part, which, surprise, surprise, also has been rotated 90 degrees clockwise. Let's see if the second row also has this pattern. First, this part rotates 90 degrees, we'll end up there. Well, yeah, that's true. And then this part 90 degrees will end up there. True as well. Let's apply it for the third row. So this part rotates 90 degrees, we'll get this part. And then this part rotates 90 degrees, and we will get a line in that direction. Then this one and this one. And yeah, so we will get a figure that's corresponding to A. A is the correct answer. Question number 33. Let's see what we got here. Well, we got in each of the rows, we have one S, and then we have one double S, if you can call it like that, and then we have one inverted S. So here we have a double S, S, inverted S. Inverted S, S, and then we need to have a double S here, right? Like this 8 configuration. The only two that correspond to that one is B and G. So which direction should this double S configuration have? Well, now we need to be a bit clever, because it can take you a while to see this pattern, but if you actually move in this diagonal direction, you will see that all of the figures have the same direction. I know it could be a bit far-fetched, but trust me, it's correct. So this direction in this diagonal is horizontal. The direction in this diagonal is vertical, so it has to be vertical. So we will have a vertical double S or 8 configuration. The correct answer is B. In this diagonal, then the direction is 45 degrees, like this. Correct answer is B. Question number 34. Well, if we follow the figures in the right direction in the rows, we can see that it probably is an addition puzzle. So if we try and put an addition here, and then see what it looks like. If we add this figure to this figure, well, it could result in this figure. That's completely correct. If we add this figure to this figure, it doesn't look like we have one circle on the inside and 3 on the outside. We only have 2 on the outside, so one circle from the inside and one circle from the outside has disappeared. Okay, so it probably means that we have these 3 circles here, and if we add one to the inside, it means that it will cancel out with one from the outside, so both of them will be gone. It's like a subtraction, 3 minus 1 ends up being with 2 on the outside. So in this case, if we add this figure to this figure, we will get 2 circles on the inside, and then we have 2 circles on the outside, and they will cancel each other out. So we have 2 minus 2. So we will just have one big circle with nothing, either on the inside nor on the outside. So the correct answer here is A. Question number 35. This is a bit tricky because we have a figure here, and then we have some kind of an instruction here, and then it ends up here. This is the result. So this middle column is telling us something that we should do with this figure to get this figure. It's actually, it has this diagonal direction here, this horizontal direction here, and another diagonal direction here. So let's assume that this diagonal direction actually means that this figure should be mirrored in this diagonal plane. This diagonal plane here. So this red part, if it's mirrored, it should be up there instead. And this blue part, if it's mirrored, it should be down there instead. So it should be reversed, which is true. That's what we get here. So let's imagine that this instruction here, this vertical line, means that we need to mirror this figure in the vertical direction here. So this blue part will be on this side, and this red part will be on that side. And that's correct again, we get this figure. Same thing here. This figure needs to be mirrored in the diagonal direction here. So this part will be here, this part will be red, and this part will be here, it will be blue. So we will have one red square in the bottom and one blue square in the top. The only figure that corresponds to that is option number C. So C is the correct one. Question number 36. This is a pretty tricky one. Let's see what we can do if we follow the rows in this direction. These almost look like bar charts, right? So first they have this orientation, like with the bars beginning from the bottom and being oriented in this direction. And here we have the bars beginning on the right side, rotated in, directed in that direction. And in the third figure we have the bars with the base on the left side, and directed in that direction. So in the second row we have the base to the right, to the left, and on the bottom. So it seems that we always need to have one bottom, one right, and one left. Right, left, bottom, left, bottom. So it has to be on the right side. So the direction of the bar chart should be in this direction. And the only options that fulfill that are A, E, and G and D. So all other options can be erased. But which color should the bars have? Well, this is a tricky part because now we really need to consider what's happening in the rows here. And what we can see after a while is that, for instance, in the first row, it's the green color that has one bar that is small, one bar that has a middle size, and one bar that has a big size. And none of the other colors have that. Remember, because this red color, it has two bars that are of the middle size. And this blue color, it has two bars that are of the small size. So it's only the green color that has all three sizes: small, middle, and big. And in the second row, it is only the blue color that has all three of these bar sizes: middle, big, and small. So the only color that remains that doesn't have one of each size in the rows direction, it's the red color, right? So here we have one red big bar, one red small bar. So here we need to have one middle red bar. So this bar has to be of middle size, it has to be red, and it has to be oriented in this direction. And the only option that fulfills that is option A. So A is the correct answer. Question number 37. Well, this is a pretty tricky question because there are a lot of things happening when we move in the right direction in the rows. For instance, if we move from this figure to this figure, you can see that this gray square just appeared out of nowhere. And then if we move to this figure, then another gray square appeared there. And then in the fourth figure, a square appeared there. So it seems that there is a checkered pattern that is expanding all over the place with the gray squares. And if you look at the options, all the options include this checkered pattern, which means that it will be fulfilled. So we will have a gray square there as well. Now let's see what's happening to the red square and the blue square. It seems that they are moving in the right direction, step by step. Red square moves there, blue square moves there, ends up there, and then it moves there, ends up there. But at the same time, more and more gray squares are added. And it seems that the gray squares are overlapping the red and the blue squares. For instance, you can see that the red square here is moving one step to the right, and then it gets overlapped by the gray square here. And then, because there is a red square underneath this gray square, and then it moves one step to the right, ending up in being a blue square. So it seems that when the red or the blue squares move from being hidden beneath the gray area to being visible again, that they change color. Let's see if it's correct, because now this blue square will move one step to the right, and it will end up being hidden by this gray square. So there is a blue square hiding beneath this square. And remember that this blue square moved one step down here, and now it's hidden beneath this gray square. So when it moves, next time it moves here, it should be red, because remember, if it goes from being concealed beneath the gray square to being revealed again, it will need to change the color as well. And voila, here it becomes red. Okay, so if we apply the same principle to this pattern as well, because now you see that this square here should move down to this part, so we should have one red square here. This place should be red now. And remember that this blue square moved one step to the right, and it's now hidden beneath this gray square. So there is a blue square hiding beneath this red square here, and now it moves one step to the right. And remember that it needs to change the color now, because now it's being revealed again, so it's gonna go from blue to red. So we will have something like this. Something like this. So we will have one red square there and one red square there. And every other square will be half gray and half white. And the only option that fulfills that is option F. So F is the correct answer. Okay, question number 38. Well, a lot of colors, a lot of going on. Is it that hard? Well, it's actually not that hard, because if we move in the columns direction, take white for instance, this white square, you will see this pattern pretty quickly, because you can see that the white square here appears in the third row, and then in the first row, and then in the second row. So never does the white square appear in the same row. How about if we move in the rows direction? Well, same thing there. White square appears in the third row, in the second row, and in the first row. How about some other color? Well, green, for instance, appears here in the first row, second row here, and third row. First row, third row, second row. So never does it appear in the same row, no matter which direction we move in. And how about columns? Does the green square ever appear in the same column? I mean, in the same direction in this way? It never appears in the same direction in the rows direction, either if we move in the rows or the columns direction. So let's see if the same applies for the columns direction here within the figure. So it's first here, it's in the first column, then it's in the third column, then it's in the second column. How about white? Second or middle column, third column, first column. Okay, so the same principle applies. So let's take red here, for instance. It's first in the first row, then it's in the third row. So logically it should be in the second row somewhere. Here in the second row. And we can rule out this option, because here it appears in the first row. This option as well, red in the first row. And the other options, red appears in the second row. So they are, it could be either one of them. Let's look at the columns section. So here it appears in the first column, in the second, or in the middle column. So it should be, the red square should appear in the third column, or the most right column. And the only options that fulfill that is A, E, A or E. So we can exclude B, we can exclude C, we can exclude D and H. Okay, so let's look at some other color. Let's look at green, for instance. Green here is in the third row, in the second row. So here it should be in the first row, green. And it's in the first row in both of these. Okay, let's take some color that is, because it's much easier to do it this way, let's take a color that isn't in the same row for these. White, for instance. White here is in the third row, and here it's in the first row. So let's see where white should be. Well, here it's in the first row. Here it's in the second row, so it should be in the third row. Let's see if it's true if we move in this direction. Here it's in the second row, in the first, yeah, in the third row. So the white square should be in the third row. And the only option that fulfills that is option A. So A is the correct answer. Okay, so question number 39. This is the last question. Thank you for your patience. I really hope that you learned something. But let's take our last efforts and energy to solve the last question as well. So this is quite overwhelming. Let's try our initial approach as we always try to see what happens if we move to the right in the rose direction. Well, this square becomes a circle and then remains a circle. Square becomes triangle. No, it's not correct. So something else should be happening. Let's see if this square moves one step to the right. Then it becomes a circle. And this circle moves one step to the right. It becomes a triangle. Could that be true? Let's try it for this square. This square moves to the right, becomes a circle. This circle moves to the right, becomes a, yeah, it seems to be correct. So square becomes circle, that becomes triangle. Could it be that simple? Let's check what happens. Let's check what happens with this circle. Circle moves one step to the right, becomes a triangle. Triangle moves one step to the right, becomes a square. So it seems that the triangle becomes a square. Let's try and verify that again. So let's take this circle. Circle moves to the right, becomes a triangle. Triangle moves where? Moves nowhere. We need to try something on in the first column here of the first figure. So let's see what happens with this triangle here. Triangle moves one step to the right. So according to this scheme, it should become a square. And yes, it has become a square. And then this square moves one step to the right. It should become a circle. Yeah, well, let's try and verify that again in the second row. So this square here moves to the right, becomes a circle. That's true, according to this theory. And then this circle moves one step to the right and should become a triangle. And yeah, it becomes a triangle. So it seems correct. Triangle moves to the right, becomes square. Square moves to the right, becomes circle. So we will have a circle here. And then circle moves to the right, becomes a triangle, correct? Triangle moves to the right, should become a square. Triangle moves to the right, becomes a square, that's correct. Square moves to the right, should become a circle, so we need to have a circle here. Okay, so now we have the third column of the figure, and we can exclude this one, we can exclude this one, and all of the other ones have that option actually, so I think we're on the right way. Let's see what happens with the second column. Or actually now we need to go from the first column here. So square moves one step to the right, should become a circle. So we have a circle. Triangle moves one step to the right, should become a square. Triangle moves one step to the right, should become a square. Okay, so square, square, circle, square, square, circle, square. So the only option is this one actually. Square, square, circle, circle, square, circle. Yeah, so we don't have to check anything else. F is the correct answer. Thank you, dear friends, for bearing with me. It's been a long video. As I've said, I hope you learned something, and you can always pause each question before I show you the answer to try and get it on your own. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you in the next one, guys.